Marilea. Thank you so much for joining me on this tiny home hot seat. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful, thank you. How are you, Lindsay?
Great. Well, I so appreciate your interest in going tiny. Tell me a little bit more about what motivates you in the tiny home journey.
I think the biggest part is a smaller footprint on this earth. And secondary to that, I like the lifestyle of just a limited amount of stuff. I don't need a lot to live. And I just want to scale down.
And what would that provide for you? Some people like to be in nature more, they want to travel, they want to save money for the future, or whatever that may look like.
Kind of a lot of those. So nature is definitely number one. And I like to travel and haven't gotten to do much of that in my lifetime. So that would be probably number two. And just the idea of not feeling cluttered and not having a lot of place to have to clean. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into owning a home and a standard residential home that you don't have with a tiny home. And that's the lifestyle that I definitely want.
Absolutely. As someone that has lived tiny for 3 years, I'm not in our tiny home right now because this would be a very big tiny home. But so this home I'm in right now is my parents' home, 1,900 square feet. They're moving back and forth every 6 months, really allowed us to kind of go and stay in their home while we figured out, our mobile lifestyle. And I can tell you, cleaning this house is a multi-day adventure. And by the
Mm-hmm.
time I'm done with one area, I feel like the other area is dirty. Not, not dirty, but it depends on the deep clean. Our tiny home, hours. Just
Yeah.
so much faster. And it can get cluttered faster because it is that classic thing, a place for everything and everything in its place. So at least if everything has a place and when it gets cluttered, everything goes back in its place very quickly.
Right. You have a limited amount of things because that's all you can have.
Exactly. So tell me a little bit more about the type of home you're looking for. Have you identified any builders? Have you looked online and seen designs?
I have looked, but very limited. Um, I mean, I would probably be on the larger side in a tiny home, not a teeny tiny home.
Right.
And I would want to consider, like as I get older, the stairs piece and making sure that it's um
It'll be there
what
for
I
your
need for
future.
my future. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
for sure. A lot of people are actually shifting that direction. Many builders I talk to, they're not doing as many lofts, they're doing downstairs bedrooms. Or if there is a loft, that it's at least got stairs. And if there, is a loft, it might be for grandkids or storage
Right.
or something else. But then there's like a Murphy bed or a bedroom on the downstairs. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that
then
would be
there's only a couple stairs to go into the home, which could be a ramp if you need it, or just a couple stairs.
yeah.
Yeah, it's smart to think, of the future. I know from our tiny home, we've remodeled it multiple times inside to accommodate sort of different seasons. We traveled early on, then it kind of stayed put. And now it's actually an investment property. So it has changed like multiple times in its
Yeah.
4 years. So tell me a little bit more about where you see this tiny home.
Well, it's kind of up in the air, but I would definitely think probably mountainous, near a body of water of some kind. I like to, do a lot of outdoors things. So kayaking and things of that nature would be perfect.
And is this in a certain state that you've identified or just
I
Georgia
haven't
in general?
identified no, I haven't identified the state. I mean, if I was to stay in California, then obviously it would be in the, in the mountains here. But potentially, I'd like to get out of California and find a place to put one in a mountainous area or a wooded area.
Absolutely. I just spoke with someone in Durango. They do allow tiny homes, and I know that's definitely a mountainous area of Colorado. Definitely you'll get your snow level in that department. You oftentimes what happened with them is their builder did not do the plumbing right and they didn't accommodate for really cold temperatures where they traveled mostly in areas, before without it being super cold. And then they had problems, but the builder came and fixed it and everything's great. So you kind of have to think like, I might do it this way for now, but where is it going to be eventually? Let's build for that, especially if it's a cold scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what kind of budget have you identified for this home?
Affordable.
Yeah.
um, I, I, I guess it would depend on, when I'm ready, ultimately where I stand financially.
Yeah.
It would need to be within my means, and it doesn't have to be elaborate and have a whole bunch of, extras.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty basic person, so.
Okay, so the two routes for you, in this, I teach about the four types of tiny homes. There's the movable tiny and the park model. All the movable tinies in this industry are being built to the park model standard. However, when you said, I don't want it super tiny, obviously those are the early days that came out. They were the 120 square foot, because my dear friend Jay Schaefer was all about very small, size. However, even he, when he had two boys, they moved into a bigger home because there's just only so much you can accommodate, right? It was small.
Yeah.
So you can go up to 400 square feet with either the movable or the park model. And when you get into areas where, to keep costs low, when you get into those bigger sizes, believe it or not, you can find builders that are park model builders. These are companies that have been around for decades, not the new tiny home builders that you see on YouTube and TV and all that stuff. They're the ones that are actually putting out, these bigger park model homes. They can go up to 15 feet outside of California. And in California, they're about 13 and a half wide, by whatever the length is, to no more than 400 square feet. However, what's interesting, because they're cranking out so many per week, per month, they're able to buy bigger lumber packages. They're able to get a better rate on a lot of the products. Whereas a builder, like a tiny home builder, might build 100 a year. These companies are building 100 in a quarter, or even,
Mm,
I'm sorry, even 100 in a month. So when you get into that kind of realm, you may not do as much customizations, but there's surely a lot of models, a lot of ways you can tweak the exterior siding, and you can definitely change where windows are placed, but you're not really changing the layout. Like, I'm going to move where the bathroom is to over here, then you get into customizations, and that gets into more expense.
right.
Keeping things like a shed roof or a really simple gable roof, those are also ways to keep the cost down. And then a lot of these companies just offer a standard rate. I've seen in kind of the 80,000. So would you need financing to make this happen?
Yes.
Okay, so what I like to do is get out my handy calculator. Let's say an $80,000 home, because I've heard, there's economic, standard, and luxury. And this is another little tweak. Let's say right now, to buy the home, the whole thing, you would get more of an economic package for appliances. But then down the road, you're like, you know what? It's time to upgrade. I'm ready for my stainless steel package. Well, then you can sell those other ones and, do the upgrade down the road, but you will
Mhm.
always be able to get a standard package. So 80,000 times 20%, because what it is a personal loan that you're getting, but there are two companies, 21st Mortgage and Liberty Bank of Utah. But I'm going to kind of leave Liberty Bank of Utah. Think of them as more of the movable tiny home builders, and these traditional RV park model builders, they're the ones that are going to have 21st Mortgage. What the cool thing about 21st Mortgage is you can link in permits, you can link in utility costs, transportation costs, setting fees. Those are all things that you're going to have to accommodate in your
Mhm.
overall price. So it might turn out to be, at 80,000, it's $16,000. What I
That,
already know is about $100,000. Let's just use that number, because you're going to have those setting, transportation, permit, and all those kind of fees. We're going to do 20%. Obviously, it's $20,000 down. So that would be something, would be your first milestone to like, okay, save up for 20K down. If for some reason you don't need the full 20% because of your credit, or you might need to build up credit, build while you're building up your savings, getting into the mid 700s will always help the the term of the loan and the interest rate. They'll be able to do lower, but your interest rates are going to go higher. So you're just going to pay more for that.
Right.
So is that something that you knew, like, okay, $20,000 is my goal to save for? Did you already have that
That's,
in mind?
and no, I really didn't have any idea. I knew, I was thinking, 80 to $100,000 to get into one. That's kind of the idea I had. I didn't have any idea what the down payment would be. And then I have questions like, what about property? Do they include the property in that loan? Can you do both? Finance both? I don't.
The answer with 21st Mortgage is yes. I would say they're the only ones, and this is the key part for you. So we've got the world of the internet, right? And you can go everywhere and it can be too much. And a lot of people that work with me are like, I just want to cut through the riffraff and get right to the point of what is going to work for me. So this is why I love doing these hot seats. What I would highly recommend is work with builders that have 21st Mortgage financing, because just to give you a little background, Warren Buffett owns 21st Mortgage. He also owns a ton of mobile home parks around the country. So no surprise, the one of the wealthiest guys in the world also, that owns mobile home parks owns the financing company. What's really cool about that, they also offer the ability to buy the land as well as the home, as well as all the other things that I just talked about, set fees, transportation, you name it. So you get this entire package together. And then you get, I think it's 25 years. So it's not maybe, oh no, you know what? They just went up to 30 years. So they're the best thing in comparison to regular residential real estate type of mortgages.
Okay.
And the better your interest rate is, the better all of that picture looks, because now you're able to get into better, interest rate. You're at the 30-year. On $100,000, we figured out at 7%. It might be better than that, but we'll just take 7% is about $700 a month. So if in other places in the country, I don't know how much it would cost for the land purchase part as well. In other places of the country, it's not as expensive in California. But let's just say you found something for 50,000, now, you're looking at about a $300 part of that loan. And I'm just spitballing here, you really kind of work through the application to get these actual numbers. But it's kind of good to like, all right, that's about $900 to $1,000 a month. Somewhere else, obviously, in rural areas, you can do a lot more. When you get into the issue of wheels, that is the rub right there for buying land and putting a home on it. The good news is the 21st Mortgage Company and a lot of the builders that sell, and this is the part where we would kind of triangulate, is that if you did want to get a home, but they don't allow the wheels, you could still get a HUD certified home. It will be built in a factory, brought to the property, and then considered as if it was real property, versus a home on wheels is considered personal property. So it does not appreciate the land it's on, but real property does. And yet everything was just made in a factory, 2x4, 2x6 construction. We have had decades and decades of stigma around trailer park and factory built homes. That is no longer, like, of course you can find crappy stuff out there, but you can also find really good quality. And I would never recommend anyone that didn't fit a good quality.
Right. That's
And
awesome.
now you're able to be within that realm. When you get into the issue with zoning and land, is the zoning of the land will determine how small of a home you can get. For example, in the city of Encinitas, if you were to buy a regular plot of land with no home on it, you can build no less than 600 square feet. But your budget might be like, well, I can afford 400. This is where I get into like, well, maybe you want to go and advocate in your local city and say, look, I want to buy this home, but you're making me have to afford something bigger that my budget doesn't allow when I'm ready to do one at 400 square feet. And HUD can go as low as 320. So there's a lot of education out there that we, the buyers and the people that want to go tiny, have to kind of work in these older sets and ordinances and rules and all that stuff. But
Right.
it's doable.
Okay.
With enough information, it is 100% doable. And I hope this helped, this hot seat helped you to kind of gain some clarity.
Absolutely, it did. Yes.
Was there any takeaway that you got that you're like, I didn't know that coming into this?
No, I know kind of a little bit of all of that, there's a lot of decisions to be made. So, there's a lot of planning. It's not just something you do overnight.
No, it's true. And did this help to kind of just kind of clarify and put things in a little bit
Bring
more,
it all together for
yeah,
sure.
bringing it together?
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
The property piece has always been a big question. And is there somebody that can help find property in other states and other areas? Like,
You
do you have
would
a
want,
recommendation?
what I recommend to people is that you would want to triangulate around. I've had someone like, I want to live in Nevada, Utah, or Idaho. I'm like, okay, let's sort of narrow that down, and I often ask my clients, can I be direct? Like, the closer you can get to, like, are we talking Coeur d'Alene, Idaho? Are we talking Boise? Are we talking, Carson City, Nevada? Are we, there's someone that's somewhere we want to go and entertain to live there. Or why,
Mhm.
instead of just throwing it, unless it's throw a dart, right? Most people aren't really throwing darts. They kind of have an idea. Either friends live there, they've traveled there on a vacation, whatever. So I would say focusing in on that. What'd you say?
I'm throwing a dart. I don't have anybody that lives out of state, so it would just be merely throwing a dart.
Throw in a dart. And you might, my recommendation is definitely go and stay in like Airbnbs and go and, whatever way you can go and take a travel to somewhere like that. Because I will tell you, moving a 400 square foot tiny home and locating it somewhere and going, oh, for example, we were so excited to hear about the Park Delta Bay in the Delta near Sacramento. It was a tiny home village and it was about 600 bucks a month to be there. When we got there, I kind of put a lot of dream into it. And then when we got there, it was a little bit different reality, more from the location about how far it was away from like the community that I knew in the Bay Area.
Hmm.
So we decided not to do that and we kind of meandered our way and figured things out from there and kind of kept it more into like the 101 corridor in California. So once again, like kind of focusing on, like, you might come up with three locations. Let's just say Coeur d'Alene because it's beautiful. Let's just say, Denver, Colorado, right? And let's throw in Portland, Oregon. And now what's interesting, one of those three allows tiny homes in backyards of single family homes.
Hmm.
So if you're buying the land, you might, it depends on, affordability and finance. You might find someone that, I own the land or I want to buy land, but I don't quite have enough money to do it all on my own. So then there's a partnering effect with co-owning the land together. You're in the tiny home in the backyard, they're in the front home. Is this super easy process? No, I say it sounds easier than it is, but it is something that there are legal agreements out there that can make something like this happen. Especially if your dream, if you believe in your dream strong enough, and you're like, this is the way I'm going to do it. The other locations you might be able to afford property because they're less expensive. Then it's just a matter of finding out what's allowed in terms of size. What I can tell you is that HUD is a national standard. So it will be allowed regardless.
Anywhere.
Yeah, because it's a national standard, but the requirement will be based on the city, based on the size, and then it's
Right.
just a matter of like, say Coeur d'Alene requires 600 square feet, you want to live in 400, you can get a HUD home, then you may need to, petition, advocate to the city to say, hey, could we reduce this for this tiny home?
Right.
Or you might need to bump up your financial to meet that requirement.
Got
And
it.
that's kind of the sort of like, let me see how I can do this. Because many people with that kind of home, they're not looking to move it like an RV, but the ability
Yeah.
to make it movable is attractive. And I would say after spending, my friend she spends $8,000 in just setting a 400 square foot home. So it's not something you want to
It's not
move
cheap.
around lightly. Yeah.
No.
And
Right.
all those extra fees need to be incorporated. But the nice part is with 21st Mortgage, you can incorporate all of them in one chunk.
Awesome. Great
Yeah.
information.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marilea. I really appreciate you being here for the hot seat.
Thank you, Lindsay. I appreciate your time and your information. It's great.